Robert Plank Show, episode 276. Embrace change, break out of your shell and comfort zone, and find freedom from self doubt with resilience champion Zaheen Nanji. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Our guest today is Zaheen Nanji, and she is a resilience champion and a business owner in Alberta, Canada. And embracing change and fear is Zaheen's trademark because she overcame her speech impediment in her 20s, learned to live life in a new country, and at the age of 15 without her parents, and is a recent breast cancer survivor. And her book, The Resilience Reflex, 8 Keys to Transforming Barriers into Success in Life and Business, became an international bestseller on Amazon Kindle. Zaheen teaches people how to make resilience their first reflex using her 3-step system, which is release, reprogram, and resolve. Lots of good stuff. I'm excited. Zaheen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So you're very welcome. And so like this whole sort of thing about, embracing change and being resilient, is this what you normally talk about? Or I mean, what is sort of like your message? What makes you stand out and all that stuff?
Yes, that's exactly what I speak on because I find that a lot of people, especially organizations, are so hard when especially if it comes to change. They feel that everyone wants to fight against it, but instead, when there is a big change happening in the department or in the organization, they want someone like me to come in and speak to them and say, hey, you know what? It's not as bad as you think. It can be easy.
Awesome, and I can really relate to that. That whole, like especially because I work from home, and a lot of people listening, they maybe have a very small business. Maybe it's just them. Maybe they have 2, maybe 3 people, and I can totally relate to kind of having those ups and downs, having all that unexpected kind of stuff happen, and not really know what to do, and kind of being kind of stuck and saying, well, I don't want to be stuck in the same place where I'm always going to be, but then, this change is coming in and I don't really feel like it's sort of in control. And so, I mean, what are your thoughts about that? And as far as
Yeah.
like, change itself is scary, but kind of staying in the same place is also scary.
Yes. And I always say to my audience that, you know what? The reason that we don't like change is because one is that we're scared of the unknown. What's on the other side of change, right? And the second thing we are scared of change is because we doubt our own capability of handling the change. Because we're so used to doing the things that we have done so far that now it will be that extra effort to change things. And can we actually do that? So I say those are the two big ones that I have found.
Awesome. So scared of the unknown and then doubting our own capability. And in your bio, when we kind of introduced you, like we mentioned that you yourself have had to overcome all these sort of scary things one after another at a young age. So can you kind of tell us about that? What happened to you?
For sure. I love sharing that story.
Awesome.
So I stuttered, and from the time that I could remember, and I strongly think it started at the age of about 6 when I skipped grade 1 and went straight from kindergarten into grade 2. So that was a huge change in itself because they thought, oh, you know what? She's smart. She can skip grade 1 and go straight into grade 2. And the way I held back, I think now is I stuttered so that they could say, oh, you know what? She's not that smart now. She can go back to grade 1 and be with her friends, right? So that's what happened there. And I stuttered into my teen years. I was um, teased and stuff. And then until I came to Canada at the age of 15, I was pretty good in hiding it. So I would use different words and things like that so that I did not have to stutter. And sometimes it still creeps up even now, but it doesn't have an emotional charge like the way it used to. Well, I went to university, and in my second or third year, I had to do a project where I had to come and speak in front of the class. Now, you may be wondering, well, I'm sure you had to do that in high school too. Well, I got away with it because I would beg and beg and ask them not to let them speak in front of the class. But being in university, that didn't work. So I finally went to a place called ISTAR, which stands for the Institute of Stuttering, Treatment, and Research, ISTAR. And I went there and I spent 3 weeks just going through fluency skills. But this is what I always inform everyone is that listen, you can learn a new habit, but it takes practice and effort. If it doesn't become a part of your subconscious, it's never going to work. And that I learned the hard way because after 3 weeks, I thought, hey, okay, I have the fluency skills and I can go do what I want. But as soon as I stepped out into the real world, I found that I could not go do the very things that I avoided. So just to give you an example, now I'm sure you and your listeners may have seen the King's Speech.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so you got to watch it because it won the Oscar in 2010.
Okay, I'll put it on the list.
Yes, so it's about King George the Sixth, and it's a true story where he stuttered. But I do tell people that this is where I was. Just like King George, I was scared of putting myself out there and speaking because I did not want to sound stupid because that was the stereotyping out there. And lo and behold, I had to speak in front of the class and I stuttered my way through it, but I went back to iStar and I talked to my speech path and I said, why am I still stuttering? I thought I would be okay. And she says 3 words to me, face your fear. Because I was still avoiding. I was still not doing the very things that I wanted to do. And that started my journey into making sure that everything I did, I would face my fear and not step back.
Awesome, and there's so much good stuff in that story there, and one thing that I feel like it I sort of feel like I got it, but then I want to make sure that I understood this is that so you developed this stutter and like you had it throughout high school, and then you're sort of band-aid on the problem in high school was to just avoid using certain words. So that was sort of like on the outside, it seemed like your problem was solved, but it was really just kind of avoiding the issue. Did I sort of get that right?
Yes, yes, you did.
Cool, and I can relate to that in so many different ways. Not in the stuttering thing, even though sometimes like my brain will be going a mile a minute and I can't get the words right and stuff like that. But just along those lines of kind of avoiding the problem, like I see that happen so often, like especially with a lot of this work at home entrepreneur crowd. Like we hear about we're going to have these difficulties and we need to sort of learn these different things about mindset and meditation and all this stuff, and I sort of see some people where they kind of do the same avoiding of the problem, right? They like sort of they need to be building a business, they need to be doing these important kinds of tasks, and then when things don't sort of go their way, they kind of go the avenue of being happy or being okay with it as opposed to solving a problem. So like do you see any of that kind of thing in your travels and in your speaking and you're helping people who are they think they've solved the problem but they've just kind of avoided it in that sort of way?
Yes, and I think that all comes down to just being okay with falling down, right? I know so many people use the word failure or use the word that it's too hard or it's too complicated. And I have to tell you that if it wasn't for going through my life as a stutterer, I don't think I would be the individual that I am today because it really taught me that falling down is okay. That if I stutter one day, hey, you know what? It's not the end of the world. That I can dust myself off and bounce back. And I use that same analogy now in everything I do. If it's speaking, if it's going, doing a online course that I've just started, which is so complicated, by the way, just with the making sure everything works with my email and, just making sure that the funnel works, right? And yeah, I make mistakes, but that doesn't mean, oh my God, this is so hard that it's not even worth it. No, I'm going to get some help. I will get a coach who has done this before and help me through it. So I always tell people that, look, the things will happen like that, and that is change. That is a part of change. That doesn't mean you give up, but look outside the box and ask yourself, what resources do I have or can I get to help me get to where I want to go?
Awesome. And I really like that advice, especially of getting help from others and getting a coach, I should say, and just sort of knowing when you kind of reach the end of your skills, you need to kind of look outside yourself and get help from someone else. And so in all these sort of situations where we're thrust into kind of like a new environment, or like you said that you're kind of moving out of your comfort zone and doing some of these technical things and trying to get all the pieces to work together. So sort of along the lines of like breaking out of your shell and stuff like this. With a lot of these sort of work at home entrepreneurs, they're kind of content with hiding behind the computer screen, and I'm kind of a computer geek, so I suffer from the problem of I just want to kind of be in my dark corner and do my stuff, but then I realized at a certain point that I was kind of held back, that if I didn't push myself and I didn't put myself out there and do some of those things you mentioned, like the speaking and doing webinars and even doing podcast interviews like that, I just knew that like I was going to be left behind, or maybe working too hard, as opposed to if I had kind of expanded my horizons a little bit. So I mean, what sort of advice do you have for someone like that who's maybe like needs to break out of their shell more, whether the reason is like they're just shy or a computer geek or a work at home, but I mean, how do people break out of their shells?
Okay, so that's a very good question. And I would say I think it's consists of two things here. So the first part I would say is start with baby steps. I mean, I didn't become a speaker overnight. It took me doing baby steps each time to overcome my fear of speaking, right? So things that I would avoid before, like even speaking on the phone, I couldn't even get the phone in my hand and dial the number because I would start stuttering right away. I would not be able to get the words out. I mean, I loved to order food that would come to my door. And that I couldn't do. I had to go out and do it. I couldn't even order food when I went into, say, a McDonald's. I couldn't even say, well, I want a cheeseburger and fries, I mean, now I can. But those were the kinds of things that I started baby steps, and I would make a plan each week and say, okay, this week I'm going to get out of my comfort zone and go try this because this is what I'm scared of doing. And I would not do it once. I would do it like three, four times that week until I got comfortable doing it, that I thought, okay, now I can move to the next thing on my plan. So something harder. And then it would go on like that. I mean, it took me 10 years to get on stage.
Okay, fair enough, and I like that. I like that advice there about how just like number one, doing the baby steps, but then also doing it more than once. Because I've dealt with people like that, where like what comes to mind is I dealt with a coaching client a few years ago who really needed to walk into some local businesses and set up some websites, and the person was kind of shy, and she finally worked herself up to doing it, like all the steps at once, like look up the business and go to the phone and pick it up and call them, and she was so like wiped out, I guess, that she felt like she had to lay down on the floor. And if only she had kind of done some of those more baby steps, like maybe one day look up who to call, or maybe one day hold the phone in their hand, or maybe one day like dial almost all the numbers, and then called four or five businesses, then maybe that could have
Yeah.
sort of taken the sting out of it, or taken that difficulty out of it, or that feeling that, wow, I just went through this huge ordeal. I don't want to do that again. So really good stuff there. Do the baby steps, and then repeat those baby steps so that you kind of get used to it. I like that.
Yes, and I forgot the second thing that I also wanted to mention there, is that it's all about the mindset, right? And what I say is mapping the mindset. So me and you know that we have to maybe speak to someone today. Or the easiest thing we can do is wake up, go to the bathroom, and brush our teeth, which we want to do every day. So if we do that every day and we don't even think about it, like it's just a part of the subconscious, why can't we take that same mindset of, you know what, I have to brush my teeth because it's good to have good teeth and make sure that I smile every day and have that, right? Then why can't we do the same thing when it comes to the business? Take that same kind of mindset and say, I want a successful business. So what will it take today to get it done? And think about it like something you have to do every day, like brushing your teeth.
I like it, and that's a really good example too, because that's one of those things where it's like we do it every day, and if we can kind of have the right mindset, then we can use that time to brush our teeth to sort of have a good time and relax or wake up with something like that. And if I miss one day brushing my teeth, I guess it's okay. But if I miss a week, a month, a year of brushing my teeth, then that's really really bad news. And I think about that as far as like exercise or like eating healthy or not. It's like, well, I can eat unhealthy one day, that's okay, but if I eat healthy, 100 days in a row, that's really bad. Or, if I want to start eating healthy, same deal there, right? Like if I eat unhealthy, and if one day I just say I'm going to eat healthy just today, oh no, why didn't I lose all the weight? Because I had to kind of stick with it. So I really like that that sort of mindset and that kind of philosophy. And then so sort of along the lines of like we get ourselves out there, and then we get outside of our comfort zone and deal with people usually. And then you mentioned a few times that we all kind of worry about sounding stupid. So is there a trick to kind of overcoming that, but then also having like that self awareness or that kind of course correction there? Because sometimes I'm worried that okay, like I'm gonna put myself out there. I'm gonna be on some kind of interview or a webinar or talk to someone to get some new business, and I know that there's that doubt in my mind. But how do I know if I'm like too confident? Like how do I avoid actually sounding stupid? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. That is a great question. And I think with me, I do a couple of things. I practice first, making sure that this is how I'm going to sound like, this is what I'm going to say, especially if it's a very important deal that you are going to make. So it's just like me going on stage and speaking. I'm just not going to go there and start speaking. I have a plan in my head that, this is what I'm going to start with, this is what I'm going to end with. But I practice and practice and make sure that this is how I'm going to do it. And the second thing is practicing in front of someone. So I always use my husband as as my coach, and I go, okay, this is what I'm going to say. This is how I'm going to do it. And it doesn't have to be a speech. It can be maybe that I am going to see a client who may be hiring me. So I will go to my husband. I'll say, okay, so you act as the person that I'm going to speak to, and this is what I'm going to say. And then he will give me his thoughts after and, tell me, okay, maybe you should leave this out. Maybe you should say this. So I think first practice and bounce the idea off of someone.
I like it. So practice and then bounce the idea off of someone so that and I can totally see how like practicing in front of a real person as opposed to just being by yourself in a room sort of forces you to kind of slow down and sort of forces you to play out that actual presentation or whatever it is you're going to give so that you can look at it for what it is and you can see if something is good and gives you more confidence or something needs to be rearranged or changed. I can totally get how practicing in front of a person as opposed to by yourself makes all that difference.
Yeah, and it's also so funny that when you hear yourself, it's very different than what you're thinking. Because when you hear yourself, you'll find that you will come up with new ideas, or you'll be like, oh, this doesn't sound right.
Right, and I imagine that if you practice in front of someone like you practice in front of your husband, you might notice maybe he gets sort of bored in some areas or sort of perks up in some areas, and especially seeing that from like a person who maybe doesn't know that subject that well or could have like looking at it from the outside in. I imagine that you can kind of get a little bit of feedback just from his sort of body language and attention level and stuff.
For sure, yes.
Cool. So, I don't want to keep you too long, but I want to make sure that, we talk about all the cool stuff. So, sort of as we're starting to wind down here, when people are, they need to get out of the comfort zone and they need these ways to deal with stress and, all the self mastery and stuff like that. And so, I mean, what is there like a big number one universal mistake you see everybody making when they're trying to, deal with change and moving forward? Like any sort of just like big mistake you keep seeing over and over in your travels?
Yeah, so when you spoke about change, the one thing that just comes over and over again is being stuck in 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 the rut, being stuck in chaos, right? And I always tell people that if you see in history and in nature and in the environment, change is always occurring, right? From seasons to even things that you need for your computer, like something 1.0 may not work today because now you need 2.0, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, so there's always something happening. So why is it that we as human beings like to be stuck where we are in chaos? And then it just continues on and on. And the answer, honestly, is it's because of our fear of letting go. And once we understand what that fear is, and once we become aware of that and embrace it, and just kind of step outside of yourself and then see yourself being that way in chaos. And when you see yourself like that, you will wonder, okay, what is keeping me there? And how can I win over fear? So that's the question. How can I win over fear? And once you answer that question, I bet you'll let go and you'll go through change in an
Awesome.
easy
What's that?
in an easy way.
Awesome. I mean that's the best way to do it, right? I don't want something that takes 10 or 20 years to figure out. I wanna start making progress on these kind of things. So cool. And what I'm hearing a lot from from what you're saying today is like there's some stuff that like I've sort of heard but need to either revisit or pay more attention to because like it's like brushing your teeth, right? It's like that daily process. We're not ever done with it. We have to go back to it. So some stuff are things that I've heard I need to revisit, and there's some like totally new stuff. But what I like about just from a lot of what I'm hearing is I'm hearing like a lot of it seems like it's all about perspective. Like like you've been saying things like it's not the end of the world, or be okay with falling down, or even like you mentioned about how like back in school when in high school you had to give those presentations, and you begged and cried for them to let you be the one person in high school who didn't give the presentation, and then I'm sure like in the moment it probably felt like the most scary thing in the world. But then, looking back on it, so many years later, it just seems like a silly thing. And if anything, it's like, well, them letting you not present almost kind of hurt you a little bit because it didn't sort of toughen you up, I guess, and give you like those sort of skills to to be incrementally better over time. So I'm just kind of hearing like a lot of perspective sort of mindset from you.
That's totally right.
Cool, awesome stuff. And I also want to make sure that if everyone heard about your advice today and they were super impressed and they want to know more, I mean, what sort of stuff do you have going on, and what kind of website should people go to find out more about you?
Right. So they can do a couple of things. They can go to Amazon and get my book that you mentioned. But the link to the book is also on my website, which is my name, ZaheenNanji.com. That's ZAHEENNANJI.com.
Awesome, good stuff. So everyone should go right now to ZaheenNanji.com and go there, and there's all kinds of cool stuff. There is, like you said, there's links to your books. There's a free guide, 7 Habits of Resilient People. There's a blog. There's stuff to read. There's videos, all kinds of cool stuff. So make sure everyone go right now to ZaheenNanji.com, and you spelled it out. And once again, ZaheenNanji.com. So thanks, Zaheen, for coming on here and sharing your story and being open with us and sharing these techniques and sort of answering all of my questions about just sort of how we can all be better people and not let all the day-to-day stuff sort of hold us back and sort of get to where we need to go. So I really appreciate you and appreciate your advice, and thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Robert.
Check out the latest episodes of our podcast on the web at robertplank.com and subscribe to us on iTunes at robertplank.com/iTunes.